interesting that when he like first started talking to me, we had this like really awkward ass conversation because he didn't start it off with like, "Hi, my name is so and so, and I would really like to feature at your show." He's like, "Hey, what's going on?" "I'm good. What's going on with you?" "I'm good." So I think by then you were like just thinking about featuring or doing some comedy or something like that, and I told you like we started talking as if I didn't have a venue, but then as soon as he's like talking about poetry, he's like, "Yeah, that's kind of why I was talking to you. I thought you had a venue. Could I come and feature there?" So after we broke through that, I totally just like gave him a list of all the different venues in this area, from like Ohio, Kentucky, Indiana, and he was like, "Holy shit, I didn't realize there were so many poetry venues in just the Midwest." And it's always a good thing to pay that respect to poets, because we're family. Like, we're all here together right now, we're all family in this room. And we always treat our features with so much respect. So, without further ado, I want you to give as much noise as you can to this room for Baraka Noel!
Y'all got some incredible writers here and some beautiful women. Some of them are the same people. That's cool. I just like shat for 10 minutes. I could shit again. I have problems.
So I wrote an epic poem. Epic shit. You guys want to hear some stuff?
Yeah! Okay, it's called The Time Traveler Forgets His Past as He Enters a New Future. It's a haiku, whatever. The end. I have a friend named Bobcat. He's a character. How can I explain? The man spent a good chunk of the last few years on a mountain by his own description, watching helicopter-clad sheriffs watch him tend several acres of marijuana crops. That's fine. But if you want to smoke me out later, I'm down. He offered me a gig and I couldn't forget that sound I never heard. Rotors chopping wildly as heavy-set older gentlemen stared down over mirror-tinted lenses, mouthing a muted warning through artificial wind as I sit, typing these words. I wonder what a world I would have entered had I taken him up on his offer. Two scenes come to mind. When I met Bobcat, he was the shiesty organizer of a local poetry event in rural Oregon. I was only passing through. My crew observed with mildly horrified amusement that Bobcat was running a rather shady competition. Years later, he called me from a Washington State hotel room where he was hiding out from police and a girlfriend with a violent grudge. I pictured him, huddled against a wall, staring out the filthy window of a balcony door and watching our son drop into the sea. He told me he lost 90 pounds of cannabis when the girl he loved called the cops. I've since heard a few more details to the story. Back then, I called my lawyer friend and threw Bobcat a couple pieces of non-legal advice. Where am I? At the moment, I'm sitting at Merchants of Reality, a particular point in time space located in the San Francisco Soma in the United States of America, 2012. It is Tuesday, July 24th at 3:40 p.m. and I'm told the Sun and Mercury conjunct in Leo tomorrow. I believe, as do many physicists, that every decision made by particles in our universe splits reality and creates a branch in space-time. I also believe, which may be insane, that we can choose to travel at these moments of branching to other worlds outside of any known dimension. This is where our story ends. Y'all want to hear more? Yeah! The bobcat. I never offer him anything anymore when he comes around. The bobcat prefers foods that are not available, often something which might also be found around the corner of the street, but which today remains peculiarly absent. How are you doing? What do you do? Time traveler, hooligan, wastrel, drug addict. I'm thinking of like the cartoon character from my childhood. Drug addict! My friends are doing things now. Getting their music in Super Bowl commercials and movies, making songs and videos I hear about from other people, people who have never met them, who don't know I know them. I appear on the internet now. My work discussed by people I've never met, never even heard of. This month I was written up by a hip-hop journalist I used to think was famous. People I know from school are appearing in newspapers and internet blogs for writing, for directing, for starring in television shows. Actors I learned acting from, appearing in my favorite television shows. Their books reaching #1 on bestseller lists, Washington Post, New York Times. Once I saw my own record appear higher on a top 10 list than an album by an idol of mine. I used to think something about the opinions of critics. I used to believe winning an award meant something other than you made money for someone. When I was 6, I wondered why I couldn't go back to the barter system. I live there now.
Liquid, a fluid theory. From what I've heard, when I was 4, I almost pulled a boiling pot of spaghetti on my head. My friend SB told me this happened to someone he knows. The burn across his chest formed into scar tissue and a story for the ladies. I spent years reimagining, retelling myself the story, what had and hadn't happened. I reached up toward our stove, grasped the pot handle, stumbled, water and steam tumble into the fire, which flares up and slaps down on me, collapsed on the floor, hot metal, scalding water, half-cooked spaghetti, and the burned boy. Bill came in just in time to stop me. Baraka, no. He sat me down at the table and told me a story. Then set the table and called my mother in for dinner, where they spoke about the office and the lawyers each had suffered through. It must have been the tesseract from A Wrinkle in Time, which later allowed me to navigate a route out from the distant stories of my father. And kidnapping, a door cracking on its hinges with Terry on the other side. And his screams for my mother to let him in. Locks, padlocks, hinges, brace, locks I didn't know the name of, closing our apartment door, even as no one was trying to get in. We received few visitors. My mother, the type of woman to sit at home. Privacy was a form of security, as was knowing we were poor, even after we didn't have the right to be. At some point we entered the middle class, but upper middle or lower middle or middle middle, the most boring and worst option within our suburban ghetto. Later, some of those kids would grow up. Wheaton became the town of Filipino restaurants, Colombian food, cuisine from Argentina, little shops, all of them, and wealthy, if not hip, suburbanites might trudge across town for a quick bite. But growing up, there was only the Wheaton Mall. And teenagers from the right part of town would hear parental warnings to stay away from the fights there. Once a boy was murdered in Pumphrey's Park. They changed the name. So people said. Every so often we'd hear stories of murderers just up the road or down the street. Not a dangerous town, just a neighborhood. with a few Haitians, some Ecuadorians, Catholic schools, parks. I came to Catholic school in the 3rd grade. It was years before I had a black girl in my class, college years. I wore a uniform a lot growing up. These days, if someone says, dress to impress, I don't show up. As far as I can tell, my parents spent double on my brother's high school education what they spent on mine for all of high school and college combined, and we went to a lot of the same schools, but I guess we always knew we were poor, and I know my parents worked hard every day. Maybe Bill Clinton did something right. I don't make money. I watch it move around me and rarely grab after it. I went to school with a lot of money. Money that never learned to shower, who did the minimum to get by. Money that did or didn't want you to know about it. Private money, secret money, foreign money. Dollars and yen wandering through the hall. I guess I don't know what money is. Growing up, I thought I was poor. Thought I was in a city. Waiting until I grew up so I could do what I want. Now I do mostly what I want, and I realize I may have had more assets as a child than I would possibly hope for now. In other words, if you could go back far enough, you might say that I was liquid. Lightning Hawkins. I'm an American hip-hop rapper. Yeah. Here are a few stories. Yesterday, riding my bike through an unfamiliar neighborhood, I came to a peculiar intersection. As I coasted toward the light ahead, a red blinking hand warning countdown switched to an unexpected familiar image. The brave, go-ahead, walking white man, civilization's son.
We think we know what to expect. We come to believe we know our universe most days, knowing something is good enough to make it true. But any events unsignificant eventually? The other day as I came to a crossing
with my wife, we saw a woman laughing with a young man on the corner. When we approached more closely, we found the woman holding her bloody mouth and calling out for a lost tooth. We stood alongside her and her friend with a collective dazed expression. When we reached the other side of the street, we heard screams. A young man howling, no, oh no, 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 while his friend shook left to right in confusion or disbelief. The 5 of us formed an incredulous lineup outside of the sugar bar. Someone struggled for words. He almost got hit by that car. A man stumbled drunkenly out of the street into shadow. Millie stared onto the avenue at an event that had not occurred. My wife has a keen eye. She noticed once from across the street an unconscious man with a bleeding head wound. This was a man who had been ignored by many average Samaritans as they stepped around the growing pool of his blood. The ambulance had trouble spotting us until I stepped from the curb to flag them down. Y'all want to hear some new shit?
Yeah. Broken shit.
Broken? That's crazy.
I don't know what the fuck. I've used a lot of mics, that's never happened before.
So I've been doing stand-up. Yeah, you guys want to hear some stand-up? Yeah! That's cool. I got some jokes. So I recently realized I should stop calling my brother a motherfucker. Like, I'm still not convinced. That's crazy. Damn, I could trade you, I don't know. So my mother is a blind dwarf. I'm a depressive comic. I hate irony. My grandfather's name was Dick Gross. My mother is legally blind, which is cool, because I hate to see her get arrested for being blind. I don't know if you could feel the panties getting wet while you were on stage, but I could smell it. I should take better care of this. This book already got sold. Yeah. So I'm from Maryland, which is boring. Maryland is boring. I lived in